Good morning, everybody. Seems maybe a little loud. Thanks for everybody for joining us today for Family Advisory Council. For those of you that don't know, my name is Steve Beha. I'm the Family Outreach and Education Coordinator for the department. Again, thank you for joining us today. Thanks to everybody online who is either attending a watch party or individually. Glad that you're joining us as well. Want to take the first few minutes like we always do at the council and just do some table introductions. So just at the table that you're at, if you don't have anybody at your table, join somebody. Just take some time to introduce yourself. Let folks at your table know why you came today, what was important for you to come and hear about and learn about. What are you hoping to gather? How are you going to take the information and network and make connections to other families to help them learn more about today's topic? And then how do you plan to apply the information that you received today? So let's just take like 10 minutes, just at your individual tables, have some conversations, and we'll reconvene in about 10 minutes. Online, if you all want to do kind of the same thing, introduce yourself online, let folks know why you joined, and we'll take the conversation where it goes. Thanks, everyone.
Oh my goodness, really? 2 months. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay. I'll help you.
So does anybody want to share maybe something they learned at their table? Something somebody else was passionate about? Something that somebody else said that really stuck with you?
I can talk loud. That parents are amazing. So parents at this table, absolutely amazing.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Ann? No, Tom.
I just thought it was interesting, we talked about the IEP or the personal plan, how it can differ from county to county and how frustrating that can be sometimes for people who move around and even those that work in the system. And we also talked a little bit about just how the systems change so fast and how hard it is to stay and keep up with everything that's happening.
Thank you. Thanks. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you for that, and hopefully you got to know folks in the room and the folks at the table that you're going to be spending some time with today. I want to go over the agenda for today really quick. We're going to have a welcome here in a moment just to go over some of the day's ground rules. We're kind of adding a segment where we're going to give updates from the various work groups that are happening throughout DODD to kind of keep you informed about the work that's being done, where it's at, where we hope it goes. Also included that, many of you know we're in budget season right now, so we're going to have a quick budget update as far as what the state budget's looking like as of today. They have till Sunday, so getting close. And then we're going to have a presentation about the role of county boards in Ohio. It's been a topic I think that we've talked about in this room quite a bit. The core group has talked about it quite a bit, so we're going to have a presentation on that. We'll break for lunch, and in the afternoon, all the work is on you. So you'll do some table work together, come up with ideas about how to best support families from a county board perspective. And then you'll relay that information to DODD leadership who's going to be here to receive that. And then we're going to end the day with some kind of team planning strategies, some framework and some tools that you might find helpful when interacting with your county board or any type of team, your IEP team, anybody like that. I do want to recognize our core group. These are some awesome family members that I get to interact with quite a bit, and they help guide and plan this meeting. You can see all their names right there, but the folks that are in the room that are part of the core group, if you could stand up. You all love when I do this to you. These are the folks that are really responsible for all the awesome content that you guys get. So take some time to get to know them. They really are a great wealth of knowledge and help run all of this. So I do want to introduce the first of the core group, Loretta, if you can come up and do our welcome this morning.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Just a reminder for all of you newbies, the first timers, that's everyone at our table, the first timer. Awesome. Restrooms are out this door to your left, and you'll see them right around the corner. There's recycling bins out in the hallway too, and is there still one in here? Yep. For any of your recycling material. The purpose of the Family Advisory Council is to give opportunities for families to interact with DODD and offer advice on issues and strategies that are important to families. And this is a forum for families to have their voices directly heard by DODD leadership. Service providers or county board staff are welcome here, but are encouraged to use their membership organizations and other avenues to raise issues that concern them. This is not a forum for soliciting business, but rather a place for families to connect and to be heard. Thank you for your understanding of that. And when asking questions throughout the day, please raise your hand and make sure you have a microphone so that everyone can hear you and the people joining us on Facebook Live can hear you as well. Thanks.
Thank you. So we want to go right into updates. First thing I wanted to let you know is that we have a new survey for families. It's on our website. The link is here. You'll see it in your packet as well. If you are interested in participating in any of DODD's work groups, fill out the survey. It'll ask for your contact information. It'll ask for where do you live, and then it also asks what topics are you interested in? What type of experience do you bring to the table? What type of policy would you like to be a part of the discussion in? So we really want to get a good pool of families so that when we are forming work groups, we really have a strong group of families to pull from and bring into those groups to make sure the family voice is loud and clear in those. There's a few folks that weren't able to be here today, so I'm just going to give you a quick rundown. I'm not going to be able to answer a whole lot of questions about the particular work groups. The Office of System Support and Standards, this is the group that is going to be doing that single plan, the one ISP work group. Shortly, they will be sending out a survey for families to complete about how they interact with their SSA, with their queue, depending if they're in an ICF or using ICF services. If you have questions about this survey, it's not out yet. It will be coming out soon. Stay connected to all the family resources. I'll be pushing it out to you. But if you have questions about it, the contact information is down there at the bottom of the screen if that's something that you're interested in. There's a work group going on right now around provider certification. So this is everything from what initial training do providers need, what the certification entails, what the front door into our system essentially is. It's been split into two groups, and that's the biggest update that they gave me, because independent providers and agency providers are different, serve different purposes for families. And so they thought it would be good to come up with two separate groups to figure out if certification looks different, requirements look different, what all that looks like. The two chairs of those two different groups, their contact information is down there at the bottom as well. So contact them if you have any input or have any questions. We do have somebody here in person. Stacy Collins is here. She's going to give us an update on the Payment and Adult Day and Employment Services Work Group. We like our long names.
Yeah. That was all me, my apologies. Good morning, thank you so much for having the opportunity to be here to give you an update. As Steve said, I'm Stacy Collins. I'm with the Division of Policy and Strategic Direction at DODD, and specifically work around leading our employment and community life engagement efforts. And one of these efforts is with this Payment and Adult Day and Employment Services Work Group. This actual work group has been in place for almost a year now, and why we originally got together was to really talk about the ways that individuals who are Medicaid recipients of services, so individuals who have an IO level 1 self-waiver and were receiving an adult day or an employment service, how they were actually paid by the provider in that service, and if the way they were being paid in service was okay or not okay. But quickly over this last year, that work group has actually evolved and has really been focusing on the last 6 months at a service called vocational habilitation. So the vocational habilitation service is a Medicaid waiver service that is available to individuals who are 18 or over who've graduated from school. And it's typically the service that happens in a sheltered workshop or a facility-based setting. And so it is a service that's really about building general work skills. So we evolved into that because we became aware of some federal regulations that we needed to follow, and we really weren't. And so we've been working over the last 6 months, and what I say is kind of right-sizing the vocational habilitation service, because we know the service is important to people. We know it's important across the state. We want to make sure that we have the service available, but we have to make sure that we're doing the service as we should, meaning that we're authorizing the service and providing the service as we should. So we actually meet on every other month. Our actual last work group meeting is tomorrow, because we have a plan in place on how to make sure that we're using that vocational habilitation service appropriately. So our last meeting tomorrow is to go over the plan of what we will be doing and when we'll be doing it. So we're going to go over that plan. I do post everything online, so it sits on the ohioemploymentfirst.org website if you haven't had a chance to go there. It's ohioemploymentfirst.org. And you can see who's on the work group, all their contact information, the work group purpose, and kind of where we are. In regards to the vocational habilitation service, just some updates of what we are doing. We are targeting changes to that service that will be effective in the summer of 2020. And I've got some allergies really just wreaking havoc, so sorry for my coughing. So 2020, summer of 2020 is the target. And what we'll be doing is we'll be making a new service available called Basic Employment Skills Training. It's a service that will start to become available in the summer of 2020, all focused on helping individuals really build the skills that they need to lead towards community employment. We will continue to have at that time the vocational habilitation service available. There will be no new admissions into that service. So once that basic employment skills training service comes up, there will be no new admissions into the vocational habilitation service. And individuals who are 50 or over who want to continue to get the vocational habilitation service can. Basically, so that they can really be able to maintain services as they know it today, and that they can continue to get that. There, again, will be no new admissions into that service. One of the reasons we really took this approach is because we had numerous conversations across the state with individuals, with families, with providers, with county boards, and really try to come up with a plan where we could make sure that the service was still available, that we are meeting state and federal requirements, and that we really understood our scale. So just so that you guys can understand, in regards to vocational habilitation, we've got 17,000 people that get the service, about 300 providers who deliver the service. And around for about 18 months, a time frame, about $115 million goes in to support that service. And so, and we talk to a lot of people, and we know it's important, so we want to have it available, but we have to make some changes. We are going to be doing a lot of training and technical assistance over the next year to get ready for that summer of 2020, sending a lot of information out to individuals and families, again, and just a lot of support to get ready for that next summer. That's I know not many of you have heard about it, so I try to give a quick summary and then the updates. Any questions for me? All right, thank you so much.
Thanks, Stacy. Next, we have Ed Carr. He is the new CIO, well, not so new anymore, at the department, and he's going to give you an update on some of the IT work group work.
Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Ed Carr. I joined, this is week 15, so I'll still claim newness. There's a lot I don't know yet. But first, Adam Herman through the OACB reached out to me, and we've re-established a stakeholder work group. We've had one meeting. We have the next one scheduled for July. This is provider, county board, and vendor participants to talk about the IT systems and how we can make necessary improvements. In addition to that, we actually have established a governance committee within DODD to establish business priorities. So those two things I think go very nicely together, because with the leadership at DODD establishing clear priorities, I can work with the stakeholder group to gain their input into that prioritization process, so that we are effectively communicating and there's a clear understanding. And for everyone's awareness, those priorities are going to be published to our website. We are working on that. Please give us a few more days. Hopefully we'll get those published. But the number one item we are working to address right now is the duplicate entry issue that the counties have, entering data into their systems and then having to enter the same data into the state system. So that is the number one project priority. The stakeholder work group, as I said, we have met once. The vendors of those third-party solutions are represented there, so they are part of that conversation and are going to work collaboratively with us to make the necessary changes. There are many more internal priorities and opportunities for better data sharing, better data collaboration, and just ideally making things better. And I heard the one gentleman's comment about change the systems. I don't know if you were necessarily referring to the IT systems, but I will say that one of the internal things that I'm looking to do and working to do is slow the pace of change and focus on quality. Make sure that we have, that the solutions we deliver are working well, they are well tested, and improve our communication out to all stakeholders that as those changes, what changes are coming, why those changes are coming. Those are things that we really want to focus on. Production stability, I believe, should be our number one focus. Business-driven priorities to making changes to those production systems is, I guess, 1A or number 2. I don't believe in 1 and 1A. I believe in 1, 2, 3 from a prioritization standpoint. Otherwise, it just gets confusing for people. So those are some of the initial things that we're focused on. One of the key challenges that we have is certainly that stakeholder group doesn't represent all 88 counties. There's not representation from all 88 counties, so getting input from everyone into that process is going to be critical, and I think we're going to work to make that happen. I know Adam has used surveys out to the counties to get information. That's certainly a mechanism that we look to continue, but I want to get input from everyone. What are some other ways that you want to communicate with us? Hey, this is not working well, or it would be great if you changed this because this information, we need this information, or we're doing duplicate work here. Those are all things that I'm starting to get and gain an understanding of, and we're going to work to improve. And like I said, once we get those priorities published for everyone to see, that's going to be on the public internet, so that all of you will be able to see these are the priorities that we've established and that we're focusing our attention on. That will be a vehicle of communication or an opportunity for you to communicate with us. What about this, right? So, again, that stakeholder work group, I believe we're going to try and meet monthly once we reestablish, the July meeting. So that will be a vehicle for you to get input into the process, into our prioritization, and gain an understanding of how we're progressing on some of the key initiatives. One other item that I want to touch on real quickly is Director Davis has asked me to take on a role of getting some innovation activity started within DODD. I had the opportunity on Friday to attend the Tech Summit and saw some really interesting technologies that are out there. Heard some really amazing stories of how remote support has come along and really helped provide better support in some ways and more cost-effective support. Again, better is a relative term, and each situation is going to be unique, but some really nice stories, really good success stories, and some very interesting technologies that are coming into play in the developmental disability space. So those are just a few highlights, and I look forward to future opportunities to tell you about some of the successes that we've been able to accomplish. But if anybody has any questions for me or any ideas, suggestions for things that we should focus on, I would very much appreciate your.
Getting off easy. No questions at all? All right, thank you, sir. So next we have Jeremiah Wagner. He is our legislative liaison and has been working really closely with the legislature and the governor's office on the whole budget process. So he's here to give you an update of how the budget currently looks and what we might expect moving forward.
Thanks, Steve. Good morning, everyone. So currently, I don't know what the budget looks like. So we started a budget process back in kind of late March, where the governor unveiled his budget with a lot of investments in Ohio and in the developmental disability space. And so over the course of the past few months, the legislator, first the House and then the Senate, have kind of been hearing testimony and putting their imprint on the budget. And so the House has passed a version, the Senate has passed a version. Neither side wants to agree on whose version they're going to take, so they've entered into a conference committee. And so they're working out behind the scenes right now what the final version of the budget will look like. And so we should have that sometime between 2 hours from now and 11:59 on Sunday. The governor has to sign the budget bill by July 1st, so they're on a little bit of a deadline. So currently as things stand, we think, each portion of the budget has really invested heavily in DSPs and homemaker personal care rates. So currently statewide, the average is about $11.12 for that component of the rate. And the executive version, the governor's version of the budget, increased that 11%, which is the highest we've been able to get, we think, in the history of the rate structure. So we're really pleased and happy about that, and have kind of been advocating for that as our number one priority. The House heard from families, heard from DSPs, heard from providers, and bumped that up additionally. And their version of the budget would take it to $13 per hour, so from $11.12 to an average of $13 per hour by the end of the biennium. And then the Senate also agreed and also saw the importance, and their version of the budget would take the average rate to $13.23 per hour by the end of the biennium. And so they're looking at differences in the bill. Luckily, that one is good, better, and best. So we feel pretty good about that and where that stands, and that's probably the number one priority of the department these next couple days or few hours, we'll see. Beyond that, the governor invested pretty heavily in early intervention services. So this budget will allow us to kind of completely become the lead agency in every kind of aspect of early intervention. In the past, it's been health, and then us at health, and now DODD will kind of house all of those early intervention services and contracts. The budget will allow us to kind of support locals in a little bit more of a manner that's a little bit more equal partnership with the state and the locals. We'll be able to serve kids with high lead exposure and with needle abstinence syndrome. And I'm probably missing some more, but I'll duck so Kim can't see me. So we're really happy and positive about that. That's probably the second kind of tier of the budget. And I guess I'll stop right there for a second. We don't have a lot of policy in the budget. I think I heard at the beginning that there's been a lot of movement and a lot of change in the system, and there's a lot of work groups that are taking kind of holistic input from a lot of people across the state on a lot of different topics, from adult day to a single plan to case management. So we're taking a little bit wider and longer look at some of those bigger issues, and this budget really is focused on investing in a few of those pain points, but not a lot of big policy changes in this budget. So the third investment is on non-medical transportation, and we have about $10 million over the biennium to redesign our rates for non-medical transportation to try to focus on the needs that we're hearing from the community, which is needing maybe smaller vehicles that can be a little bit more nimble and flexible, and getting folks where they need to be, whether it be work or a day service or some other interaction in the community. So those are kind of the three investment pillars of the budget. The Senate's done a little bit, the House has done a little bit on some various issues, earmark there, or some language we don't like there. But I don't know if there's anything else I should cover, or I can answer any questions. But that's kind of where we're at, and hopefully by Monday we have a budget. Yeah, oh yeah, franchise fee, multi-system use. Yeah, so I lied. There's a big policy piece in the budget. So in our introduced version of the budget, we did not have anything surrounding this, but we've been working with our county board partners and our provider partners to try to get to a place where we can better serve multi-system youth. I know Tina's done a lot of work with grant work, and we're doing a lot of work with refocusing people in the department to work on in-home supports and how do we get to families earlier and working kind of across agencies. But one of the components of that is how do we serve youth who might need a little bit more of a long-term solution that's out of home. And so what we've come up in this budget is through the ICF program, we're hoping to pay an increased daily rate for providers who work with the department to implement kind of training and a structured program to serve these youth with complex needs. And so this budget, as it stands today, as it passed out of the House, provides an increase in the ICF franchise fee. So ICFs pay a fee per bed, and that allows us to bring in revenue, which would pay for the program. And so that's a priority of the director, don't tell him I forgot, and that we're really excited about and should see here in a couple days. Questions? Wonderful, thank you.
At this point, when it's going to conference committee, is there any point in time that families can get involved in the process? Should there be anybody that they're reaching out to if they have input on any of the initiatives?
Yeah, so I know our county partners are reaching out quite a bit to members, and other advocacy groups are, and you're more than welcome. If you ever need help through myself and my information, or through Steve, I can always help in getting you in contact with your office, or the people who are on finance committee are pretty important at this time. And now the conference committee has 3 members from the House, 3 members from the Senate, so they're kind of the decision makers at this point. But I couldn't tell you if they'll be done in a couple hours or a couple days. So the time is short, but if there's anything that you're super passionate about, whether it's in the next couple of days or afterwards, we're more than happy to help you connect. Thank you.
Great, thank you, sir. So we hope to kind of continue doing this at the beginning of each Family Advisory Council session for you all to get information directly from staff about the work that's going on, any type of work groups, budget initiatives. Obviously that's not going to happen for another 2 years. But all those type of things I think is really important for everybody to be a part of and know what's going on and receive regular updates. So any questions about the work group process, how to get involved, anything like that? Quiet crowd today. All right. So Adam's going to be here in a second to talk about the role of county boards. I did want to take just a moment. In your packet on the left-hand side behind the agenda and everything is a one-pager that says options for families to stay connected with DODD. These are all the different ways that we have currently set up for you to stay connected with us, to interact with us, to stay up to date on everything that's going on. So I just want to take a couple of minutes and highlight some of them. Obviously, you're here, you know about the Family Advisory Council and the core group. We do have a family organization forum. So if any of you are part of a family organization, we provide regular updates, quarterly updates to those family organizations. Feel free to sign up for that, to send somebody from your organization to that forum. The Community of Practice for Supporting Families, our next event is on the 31st of July. So we will be talking a lot about the different strategies around the state for supporting families and where that work is going forward. Watch parties, we have really been encouraging folks. We know being here in the room is really important, the networking and the connection that you all are making. But we also want to provide folks online with the same type of opportunity. So really trying to promote this idea of watch parties where the morning sessions of our meetings are streamed live and families can get together in their local communities, at their county board, at their library, wherever it might be, and make those connections locally. So really trying to let folks know about that and let them know that that's an option to get together. Our Family Talk series is a streaming series. It's also available on YouTube. It's a quick 15 to 20 minute conversation around a certain topic. I encourage you to check those out. This year we started a new 5 Things You Need to Know About series. Some of you have seen that on our social media channels. Quick 2.5 minute videos, 5 things you need to know about getting ready for a psychiatry appointment. We just released one last night, 5 things you need to know about supporting somebody with a dual diagnosis. And so just real quick, big level, high level ideas, and then obviously resources for folks to tap into after that. If you're not a part of them, we do have a Facebook group, both a family forum and an early childhood forum. So if you're a part of those social media channels, join us in there. And then of course you can follow us on all the social media outlets. Any questions about that? I assume not. Well, I think maybe what we'll do while we're waiting on Adam, we know the topic today is the role of county boards. Maybe at our tables, we've had some new people join. If you could introduce yourselves to the new people at your table, give them a quick introduction. Maybe talk a little bit about at your tables, what is it that you want to learn today about the county board system? What questions do you have maybe from your table that you would like to hear from Adam and hear their perspective on it? So let's take a few minutes. I got an update from him. He's going to be here just shortly, so we won't have that long. But just take a few minutes, have that conversation at your table, and we'll get started again soon. Thanks.
For the good of everyone that these services exist. We can't control for that. We can try as much as possible through that awareness function, the community relations function, to make sure people realize it is important to fund services for people with developmental disabilities, but at the end of the day, if they don't buy in, they're not going to get the funding, and the services are going to look different in that county versus one that's literally right next door. Again, property owners in each county choose different levels of support when they have the voting booth, similar to school funding. And the school funding situation's worked out great, right? So we'll just keep moving forward with that. Also, the value and types of real estate in each county determine how much is raised. Again, if you're in a largely agricultural county, or if you have a lot of commercial property in your county, or largely a suburban residential county, your receipts, your tax receipts are going to look a lot different. And that means different levels of funding and whether or not you're able to provide those types of services. I gave an example here. 1 mil of property tax in county A might raise $2 million, while 1 mil could raise $10 million in another county, based on just the number of people, the number of parcels, the type of parcels, etc. So that there's so many different reasons why a county can have a different level of funding available that has nothing to do with their interest in providing services. Oh, also, because the majority of local funds that I mentioned earlier, we send $1 to Washington, D.C., and they send back right now $1.63. So we put those two amounts of money together, and that's what we use to fund services people on waivers, with most people in the system being served on a waiver, as long as they're not children. That magnifies the disparity between some counties. Because if you think about it, if you're only offering a certain amount of locally funded services because you have a limited budget based on the decisions of voters in your community, you can't then take that money and magnify it at the federal government with that extra $1.68 that the other counties can. So when you factor in Medicaid as well, that can make those differences even more stark. Stark as in apparent, not the county. Oh, also, while a very small amount of state funding is provided to county boards, it's nowhere near enough to ensure that each county board has the exact same amount. To do that would require the state to spend billions of dollars to make up the difference, to make sure every county was the same, and that's just not going to happen. So we have to rely on voters locally and the federal government to help try and fill those gaps. The next question, what exactly should I expect to happen when I connect with my local county board? So that was a very wide-ranging question. I'm sure most of the people in this room, if you're in this room, you've been acquainted with your county board, so this may be very repetitive or elementary. But if it's your first time contacting the county board, you'll be asked to go through the eligibility determination process to see if your loved one's disabilities qualify for services. In some counties, they refer to this as the intake process. Eligibility determination occurs through a statewide tool called the OEDI, or the COEDI, the Ohio Eligibility Determination Instrument, or the Children's OEDI for kids. They're not designed to make a medical determination. They're a functional determination. Because developmental disability in the state of Ohio is not a medical diagnosis. It is a legal construct that is a functional definition of whether or not a person's disability will significantly limit their ability to interact as a typically developed person would. So the OEDI and the COEDI are the process to go through to make sure that, or to determine the level of functional limitation that would qualify a person for services. I went to college with a person who's now an attorney, and this is when I very first started. She has a physical disability. She uses a wheelchair. And I said, oh, well, did you receive services from your local county board? And she said, no. I mean, the only thing I needed was a wheelchair. That was it. So she could have, in the medical definition, qualified as having a developmental disability. She does have a developmental disability because it was apparent when she was born, but her functional limitation was not such that she needed any additional service. So she never entered the county board system, and her family never even thought about that because all she needed was some physical supports, and she lives independently on her own and does everything that, she's an attorney. So once eligibility is determined, chances are that the person will be assigned a case manager. It's not required that a person have a case manager. Many people don't know that. You can request an SSA, but you don't have to have one to receive services. I know a lot of counties will only assign an SSA if that person is about to receive a lot of services. If they just want to come in for respite, or they want to come in for speech therapy or something, they may not even get an SSA because it's not required for them to have an entire plan about their whole life when they just need this one thing. And the same is true for a lot of kids. In many counties now we are assigning SSAs for children, but how much life planning does a kid need? They're not being taken places their parents are taking them places. They don't have to live independently, they live with their parents. That's why a lot of people in Ohio actually don't have an SSA currently, but when they become an adult and when they develop the need for the programs and services that county boards can make available is often the point when they get an SSA. After a case manager has been assigned, this person is going to be the primary contact with the board. They'll help you create an individual service plan, an ISP, give you information about service providers in your county that offer the types of supports a person might need. Case managers are also responsible for ensuring that services are meeting a person's needs, the person is safe and healthy, and that a person or their guardian has the information they need to make decisions about their futures. That's it. I mean, you all know there's free choice of provider. You have to be able to forge your own path, essentially. The county board can't mandate that you do a certain thing or receive a certain service. They always give you the options, and they say, this is what we think would be good. Here's a list of providers for that service, or you can say, I don't want that. They're just there to say, here's what we think a good plan would be. And then if you take on parts of that plan, we want to make sure that it's being successful and that the services you're receiving are of the quality you expect. I will say this, every person served by a county board, if you have an SSA, should have a reasonable expectation of responsiveness from your case manager. There are some counties in which case managers there are many counties in which case managers are way overworked. Their caseloads are stretching into the 40s, sometimes the 50s number of people. That is a practical reality in many counties, but that still means that you have a reasonable expectation that people are going to respond when you call the county board. Your case manager is going to respond. So if you ever have problems with that, don't hesitate to bring it up. Now, you can't call them once a day and say, they haven't called me back. You have to give them a reasonable expectation of time to call you back, but not getting a call answered for weeks, that's a problem. And feel free to bring that up, whether it's with the SSA director or higher up the chain with the superintendent. Please bring that up, because you do have that reasonable expectation that they're going to get back to you in a normal amount of time. Even if they have a large caseload, you're still on it. And it's important that you make sure the county board knows if you're not receiving the level of service you believe you need. The next question. As a family member, what is the best way to stay connected to what is happening in my county board? So there are several options here. Again, always stay in close contact with your case manager, whether it's an SSA, service coordinator, whatever they call themselves. Stay in contact with your case manager. They are going to be your portal to all the things you need at your county board if you have them. It's their job, and that's the only reason they exist, is to make sure you are getting what you need to help you write the plan, to help you make choices in your life. This is important. Sign up for any email publications, printed newsletters, or other types of updates offered by your county board. That's how, we're in this weird transition. I don't know if they had this when the telephone came in, or like from telegraph to telephone, and then from telephone to other things. But county boards have to communicate in many different ways now to try and reach different generational audiences. They're still offering printed newsletters for folks who don't really use computers. They have to put out emails for the people who want to see it in their inbox. They have to tweet. They have to put it on Facebook. They have to do live videos. They have to do all kinds of things to make sure the people they serve by the board, the communities that support county boards, understand what services are available and what the county board is up to, basically. So make sure you're following all their accounts on social media. Keep your contact information up to date. That is one of the number one issues county boards face across the state. I know this because when we were doing the, you guys remember the Fix the List campaign, the waiting list updates? We had county boards send out postcards to people with their most current address that was on file at the county board. And unless they put a sticker over their return address, when those things bounced, they came back to OHCP. My mailbox was full almost every day with bounces from people who had no current up-to-date address information in the system at their county board. And we scanned them all and sent them back to the county board and said, your people are, they moved, or they're not here anymore, or whatever the case may be. But that's one of the number one challenges county boards face, is having people update their information. You think just because, I call them all the time, they know how to get in touch with me. If they have to send you an official letter, or if your email address stops accepting their bounce, or starts bouncing their communications to you, you are not getting the information everyone else is getting about the county board. So always make sure, if they start to go silent for a while, investigate it. It's not that they're not sending something, it may be that you're not getting it. So it's important to keep all your contact information up to date with the county. I mentioned this earlier, follow your county board's social media accounts. Depending on the county board's level of sophistication and ability, they're going to have different social media accounts available. Facebook is a pretty safe bet. Some do Twitter, some do Instagram, some do Pinterest, YouTube videos. It just depends on the resources, the time, and the skill level of people who are in those positions, what platforms they're on. But that's how most information is being shared now, is through social media. When grandparents are the number one demographic growing for Facebook, it's important that you follow your board's page and that you see what's happening, and if you want to, you can interact with the board, but follow all the social media accounts for your board, because chances are that's the fastest and easiest way for them to reach the largest possible audience. So keep that in mind. Attend monthly board meetings. I understand we all have busy lives. You don't have to go every month, but once or twice a year maybe. Try and check in. Go to a public meeting that your county board hosts. There are public bodies. They're required by state law to hold public meetings when they're making big decisions about the future of the board. This would also go for like public forums or town hall meetings that are scheduled by the county board. Way too often we hear, well, this is the first I'm hearing about it. It's like, well, we sent some emails, we put it on Facebook, and we've talked about it for the past 4 board meetings. There were presentations, there were all these things. Well, this is the first I'm hearing about it. At some point, it's not the county board's responsibility to knock on your door and get a signed letter from you saying, I have read your newsletter. You have to be, it's a two-way street. So make sure you're showing up when they put on a public meeting. If you can, try and get notes from what happened at that meeting. Look at the meeting minutes. County boards are required to keep official public documents about everything they talk about in those meetings. That's a great way to see if it rises to the board's level of attention, chances are it's a big deal. And make sure that you have a way to get that information, whether it's on their website or attending in person, to know what the board is up to through the public meetings. And get involved. You all are involved in this group, and I'm sure you're all involved, so I'm kind of preaching to the choir here. But getting involved in local county board programs for the people that are served by the county boards is a great way to stay in the know about what's happening. Whether it's activities like I list Special Olympics here, or like a self-advocacy group, other similar activities. When you have kids involved in your local school district, allow parents to join the PTA. They find out more from the PTA than they find from all of the official school publications combined. The same is true for county boards. The more you're involved with the programming at the county board, the more in the know you're going to be about the decisions and the changes that are happening in your county board, whether it's new services, discontinuing services, opening up a new building, any number of things. You're going to find that out by being more involved. I think that's it. Yeah. So, next question. Why do some counties seem to offer more to their families than others? This is, again, the difference in service offerings are based on whether that county has the voters have provided that kind of enough financial resources. Those with more money get to do more. In some instances, a county may seem to offer more supports because there are no other service providers willing or able to meet those service needs in that county. If the county board had been, beginning to end the solution for people with developmental disabilities and their families in that county for decades, maybe providers never had a chance to get a footing. The county board was, cradle to grave, as they say, as morbid as it sounds, the solution for people with developmental disabilities for so long that there are no other providers, and they're just starting. That may be why one county seems to provide more directly from that county to people than another county right next door, because maybe that county next door, like Ross County, I keep bringing them up, but they're the easiest. Ross County, if you go to, I don't know, this is here I'll pick on Pickaway, Ross County, they privatized long before Pickaway. And you may say, well, what the heck? Pickaway County Board's offering all this stuff over here. Well, it's because their community was different. It doesn't mean they have any less interest in Ross County. It just means they did something differently. So money and history are often the two biggest predictors of whether or not a county board can offer services, and why it may seem that one county is offering more than another. Yep, again, and this is based on history again. I use schools as the example of, one county might have a school, and like, why does my county have a school? Well, it's because the local schools in your neck of the woods, they took on a priority of serving people with developmental disabilities, and that's why the county board school closed maybe 10, 20 years ago. It's based on those types of factors. But again, all county boards must create or must offer all the services that are mandated by the revised code. You can expect that across all 88 counties. All the things that I mentioned at the beginning, those must be offered in order for a county board to remain compliant. Question 7 is the last question, so we can open it up for questions after this. But where can we get a service progression chart through the lifespan so new families can see how the system works? How many of you have seen our life map, the county board life map? A couple of hands. This is a tool, I would say, we created this in 2014. I would say we probably put out 75, 80,000 of these. And county boards often use these with new families through the intake process. They have them out just in the lobby for people to come in and learn more about the system. We use these with legislators. This is a very complex system when you have people who are going to make big funding decisions or rule or policy decisions about how we operate. Giving them a kind of a crash course and a reference they can come back to is important. We use this with legislators. We use this with anyone who wants to know more about the county board system. It's called the Life Map, and it follows, we use the metaphor of being on a road or on a path of some sort. And it follows people throughout their lives. I've actually got, Jeremiah, would you mind assisting? I think I brought 100 with, make sure everybody can leave with one today. Yeah, maybe Steve, if you could also assist. We just recently came out with the 4th edition, so we keep updating it to make sure that it's current and it reflects what the system is now. It contains a little bit about county boards in the beginning, and some of the language in the front will look familiar because I borrowed it from my presentation, and some of the graphics. And then it starts, I'll wait till people get it, so you can all follow along. If you don't have Or if you want to refer it to somebody and you don't have one in your hand, you can go online. We actually host this on our website. You can, it's like a plugin where it almost looks like something you can flip the pages of. You can go through and read it. It's just our website, oacbdd.org/lifemap. And you can download a PDF. So if you want to print it off yourself, you can. It's not going to look as nice as this, but you can. And you can also share it with people. If they have a question about what's going on in the system or how the system works. You can also order life maps. You can get one for free from your county board if they use them, chances are. But if they don't, or if they don't have any, they're only about $1 each. So if you really want some, or you want to, have them for your family meeting, you want to give us $10, we'll send you 10 copies. Or if it's 10, frankly, we'll probably just send them to you. But not all over the state, because we only have a few left. So you get them online, but this is the life map. Yep. We established 6 stages of life that are defined by their level of development and the services they should expect to receive. This is in the book. I've just pasted this from that so you can follow along. But as you can see, each stage of life, from birth to 5, school age, transition age, adulthood, retirement, and aging, all of those periods of life have different expectations, different service expectations, different levels of development for a person, and how they interact with their county board is going to be different in that life stage. So we've broken it down over a 2-page spread for each life stage and a number of different categories that you can see in front of you, like what are some service providers, who are some partners you'll need, what are expectations and goals for families at that stage of life, what are the county board's responsibilities at that stage of life. All of that is included in this document. At the end, we've inserted the list of acronyms and abbreviations for our system. That's a new addition for the 4th. So we really want this to be kind of a handbook for people as they go through the system to know, here's what I can expect in most cases. It's not going to be an end-all be-all for everybody. For example, there is not, we don't specify what types of providers a person will need. A person might be great in a community setting. They might be great on a waiver, receiving home and community-based services in that stage of life. They may have 24/7 needs and may need to go into an ICF, or perhaps even a developmental center if they have significant behavioral issues or interaction with the justice system. We don't get into the very specifics of who's going to do what. We just say, you're going to be partnering with some private organizations that are not the county board in order to receive the services you need, with the exception of DCs, of course. So this is what we've created. We're always open for feedback. If you see something in there that's confusing or you think should be added, don't hesitate to contact us, email us. We're happy to make changes. This is our 4th round. So that's what we've created. We think it's helpful based on the feedback that we've heard from families and from county boards especially. And we're happy to provide copies as necessary. You can also look at it online. So with that, if you have any questions that were not submitted in advance, I'd be happy to attempt to answer them as best I can.
Okay, so I have a question regarding the SSA for children. So in my line of work, I refer a lot to the county board and DD. I do special education advocacy, so I'm in IEP meetings all day long. So I hear a lot of times that once we get them to the co-ed, they go through that process, and then the next thing I hear is, now what? Because we know we're eligible, but nobody's contacted us. I don't know what that means. Now what? So is there somebody from, I would think that there would be somebody from the county board that would follow up with those children specifically that have qualified for services through the DD and explain the process or explain this. And I'm finding that that is a very huge missing gap in a lot of counties in Eastern Ohio. I don't know what my question is exactly. Can you fix that? That was my question. Can you fix that?
Short answer, no. Long answer, I don't want to make sweeping generalizations, so I won't. But at the very end of your statement, counties in eastern Ohio. Counties in eastern Ohio are among the poorest counties in the state.
Oh, well, I know.
Which you know. Chances are that it's not that they say, we just don't care. It's that they don't have the resources maybe to hire the extra 2 or 3 people it would take to provide that link. But I will say they should be doing better, because the intake process for kids is how most people enter the developmental disability system in Ohio. So whenever you have specific instances or a pattern of instances that you don't want to be specific to a particular county, boards will, this is human behavior, boards will always assume things are going well if no one says anything. And I'm not saying that no one has said anything in your instance, but this is where family groups are important, where networks, like on social media, almost every county has its own, sort of private Facebook group with parents in it, where they kibitz and talk about things and plan events and all that kind of stuff. When you hear about those instances where people are not making that leap between, okay, you're eligible, and how do I get services, bring it up to the superintendent. And if they don't know about it, they will, and then you can follow up with them. If they do know about it, they can maybe give you an explanation, or they can take whatever personnel action is necessary inside to say, okay, we need to reorganize how we're doing this intake process, because I just heard that 4 families had this experience, and that's not something that's acceptable for how we provide services in this county. If they don't know about it, they can't fix it. If they do know about it, they need to be making some reasonable progress towards that. And if they don't, then you can raise it further up the chain. Call Steve, and he'll just swoop in with his cake and fix the problem, right?
Appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Call Steve is the answer to almost every question.
A question from Amy on Facebook. She
All right.
wants to know, what role does the county board have in helping individuals who are graduating high school and who have severe behavior challenges?
So transition age is one of the most difficult life stages for a variety of reasons. One is that, for most counties, for many counties, people who are in transition age are coming from another service system, and that is the local school district. Depending on what supports they've been receiving in the school district, that could influence how county boards would interact with that person. There is no pat answer, because there is no requirement. So county boards trying to tempt this in the way that they feel works best in their community with the partners that they have in their community. So if they have a really supportive, vocational program with the JDS in their county, and they have a really good OOD coordinator for that region in their county, and they have providers that are special or have specialties in serving people with significant behavioral challenges, they may do a better job. It's just, it varies. It varies by county. County boards are putting a special effort into helping people in transition age, because that's like I said, one of the most challenging, one of the most difficult life stages for a person with developmental disabilities. It can often determine their path if they're going to go to a sheltered setting, or like a workshop or adult services, versus a job out in the community, or maybe school in the community, or taking on more volunteer obligations in the community. That's that fork in the road where they have that opportunity to make a choice. So county boards have been placing a lot of emphasis on that, working with OOD, the Opportunities for Ohio's Disabilities agency here in Columbus, which is the de facto disability employment agency in Ohio. But each county, based on its funding and its history, is going to do things a little differently. But I do know that it's been a priority for the past 4 or 5 years, particularly because in the past, county boards did not have to worry about that. It was always, well, they're going to be with us for the rest of their lives. So we'll make that decision at the right time, and we'll set them up on a path accordingly. Now they're like parents. It's, okay, how do we position this person to be the most successful in transition age so that they can fledge, they can leave the nest and fly in the direction that they want. They're still learning. So there is no pat answer, unfortunately. There is no requirement. I do know that Employment First says that we're going to try and make sure as many people as possible who want to work and who can work have the opportunity to do that. And if a person has significant behavioral challenges, that would become part of that process. But our system is very person-centered. So it's not going to be the same for every individual. It's not going to be the same in every county as a result. I wish I had a better answer.
So two things about the life skill, or I mean about this age, going from high school to adult world. I think I'm an SSA by the way, but one of the issues I think is that in our county, let's just say that the kids are not learning enough about life skills and about that whole area of life, other than, and the job stuff's very important as well. We're working with OOD and that kind of thing. One of the things I'd like to hear if other PDs are doing some creative things in the summertime, say, with helping those students in that age range, maybe in a collaboration with OOD or on their own. So that's one thing, to, again, to help prepare them. Then the other things back to the 0 to 3 to DD transition. One thing our county is doing currently is, I'm the representative for the younger age kids right now, and so I've been being invited to transition meetings that the EI system is having with these families prior to the child turning age 3. So they get to meet someone as a representative from the DD community or county board, and then at that time of age 3, they have a name with a face or face with a name that they can then request services, okay? And then if they don't at that moment, then they can do it again at 6 for the co-ed, et cetera. So the question with that is anybody doing, and I feel like that's working fairly well. The families at least have heard of DD and that there's this person that, gave me their card and, but are county boards doing anything to help that system or be creative to help families in that transition age of life as well?
So this is a little different. I mean, they're both transition ages. So one's a transition from being an infant toddler to being eligible for children's services. Also leaving what is ostensibly children's services, even though teenagers would never want to be called children. Leaving services for transition age youth and getting into more adult services. I know that through the DD Council, actually, OECD is working through, have you heard of the Project Trees framework? So county boards are piloting and putting in place programs that are designed to build family support networks in different regions of the state so that families can help one another with the kinds of things you're talking about. So giving them almost, I think this is not a loaded word, but like a Sherpa. Like when you're climbing the mountain, you've got a Sherpa with you to say, don't go over there, go over here, this one's the safe one. You can choose these two paths, they're both going to be fine, that kind of thing. Building those family resiliency support networks through this grant, through the DD Council, is, particularly online, is one of the big objectives we've been working on at OECD. I know that there's a parent-to-parent or family-to-family organization nationally that we're modeling and putting their framework in place here in Ohio, and that immediately comes to mind as something that we're working on.
Okay.
When it comes to the actual staff of the county boards, nothing is immediately coming to mind. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but chances are it's going to be more localized, and it's often through the early intervention side of house at county boards where that comes through. I know they're making a lot of headway there, but specifically to that point of how to help navigate the transition between leaving EI at 3 and potentially being ready to sign up for school services at 6, that is a challenge that exists.
Well, I think the challenge with it too is families have an expectation of 0 to 3. If they've had a good program, they've had direct service, we use that word.
Right.
And that's amazing, and very helpful, and then you come to the DD and there's no direct service. But, so this is wonderful, because in meeting with families, it's pretty difficult to say, we're here for you from birth to death, but yet
Right.
we can't provide any real service. I'm totally, love my DD,
Yep.
you know, but it's the idea that we have expectations of what's going to be provided for me, and not as what do I want to say, where they're having that expectation that they can be served on a silver platter. It's the idea that
Sure.
what services are you providing as a county board in my county? And so I think that's going to be very helpful to say, here's where our hands are tied.
Sure.
We're going to be creative in this, that, and the other. I think it's that creative piece that I'm wanting to know how I can connect with other county boards to find out how they are being creative. Maybe I can duplicate it in my county. So that's kind of and maybe as a professional then, where can I find those? Is there a forum that county boards are saying, hey, we're doing this great program, it's working well?
So for anyone who, for you, you're having this question, for anyone that is also having this question, a person on our staff that would be good to contact is Susan Jones at OACB. Her email address is sjones at our website, oacbpd.org. She is, she's really kind of in charge of our early intervention and children's services support. You know, as a trade association, we have to try and support all aspects of a county board's operations. So she is the person who tends to handle those topics and would be much more well-versed than I am about the specific initiatives perhaps underway in some counties. And if there aren't any, the right person to go to about trying to maybe set one up as a pilot or see what works so that it can be modeled in other counties. That's another role that we play at OECD is let's experiment. Let's just throw some stuff at the wall, see what sticks, and when it does, say, all right, counties, that one stuck. Maybe you should try it. So that's...
Thank you very
Sure,
much.
no problem.
Hello, I have a question. You've been great. You've really been very thorough, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I would have a question about emergency respite care.
Okay.
Especially if they're behavioral. I mean, emergency respite always seems to be full every time you call. And, you know, is there any plans to open up more of those in the counties? I live in Franklin County, and it's always full. So, especially, you know,
Yeah.
behavior people.
I don't know the answer to that question, but I can get back with you and see what initiatives might be underway to make more emergency respite options available. I know Franklin County is tough because if you add Cleveland and Cincinnati, Cuyahoga and Hamilton together, I don't think they serve more people than Franklin serves alone. So there's just a dramatic or a substantial amount of need in Franklin County that just doesn't exist in other parts of the state. But I can get back with you on that. I wish I knew more immediately unless you have some options from Franklin County.
No, we don't have any more beds available at this time, and we're not planning on making any more beds available at this very moment. But we are working internally on having the turnaround quicker, so that our folks aren't in emergency respite as long as they are, and then we are able to find them a permanent house where they can make it their home and so on and so forth quicker than what we have in the past. So that is something that we are working on. It's not always easy because, as you know, when you have people with behavioral challenges, it makes it harder for them to find a home. So we're trying to make sure that we're finding a place that's going to be safe for them.
And is that presenting a reason usually for respite behavior? Is that the presenting reason?
So the question is the reason presented for the need for respite behavioral in nature typically?
I don't run that section, so I'm not 100% sure. Like, we do have some folks in it right now. A lot of our multi-tiered system individuals are in our respite homes right now. So yes, that is one of the big components. Yes.
Before the next question, is this going to be archived somewhere so that I can capture these questions without writing them down?
Yeah.
Because I will follow up.
Yeah, it'll be on Facebook and will be eventually posted on YouTube as well.
Awesome. So I can see this train wreck on the internet.
I think there is a question from Facebook. Let's grab that real quick, and I'll get around with the microphone.
Yes, Lisa from Facebook has a question. Her question is, the self and level 1 waivers can be used as payment for community programs such as music and art therapy, adaptive horseback riding, gym, or swim classes. The IO waiver is not able to be used this way for payment, but my person needs services in the community. Can you elaborate on why and offer suggestions for coverage for individuals with this waiver?
Thank you for your very specific question. This is one I would need to follow up on. I know how the pieces fit together. I often don't know the inner workings of the very specific pieces, but I can definitely get back to Lisa. Lisa, I can get back to you on that. I don't have that level of advanced knowledge of the case management function when it comes to waivers to be able to answer this with any shred of accuracy, and I hate to say something that would be wrong. So I'll look at the archive video, and I will follow up with our staff internally and see what we can come up with. Actually, if you can email me as well, my email is aherman, Herman, @oacddd.org. It would be helpful to know what county you're in, because as we mentioned, or as I've mentioned throughout this hour, it's a very localized system, and pathways to, I mean, the waiver's the waiver, but how counties can perhaps come up with alternate ways for a person to get services, maybe not even through the waiver. Those are options that are available in some counties, that you may not even need to access your IO waiver benefit to be able to do the things you want to do. So it'll depend on the county, but then once we figure that out, and if there are other options available, we can talk about options when it comes to using the IO waiver. Sorry, I don't have more specific information immediately.
Is there any way that the county board can help parents find quality providers? I have gone through probably 9 providers in 2 years.
Are those agency providers or independent?
Agency
Okay.
providers. I have one independent provider who's been working with me, and she's great. But to find another independent provider that provides that kind of services is like trying to find a needle in a haystack, and it's been horrible. There's been numerous MUIs, and I can't. And the problem with the respite, it was a mess because my father, all of a sudden, I was providing natural supports for my son, and my father took ill, and I had to come home and take care of him. So I had my son and my father, and I'm running from one house to the other because I couldn't leave either. My son didn't have 24-hour care, so I'm running to him, and my father didn't have any care. So I tried to ask the SSA to help me find a provider to provide 24-hour service, and I was given these names, and it was a train wreck completely. And the database out there, and I was going to ask Mr. Carr, that was totally not good. But is there any other way to, help families, or can they give? I know they tell me they're not allowed to give suggestions on providers, but it seems like it's just a waste of time. And if you know that this name has came up in your department so many times, and then you see that I'm choosing them, can't they? I mean, I guess a whole bunch of So they're absolutely out. So where do we go?
So, I mean, in rare instances will a provider have a history of UIs or MUIs, unusual incidents or major unusual incidents, that would rise to a level of being reported without having their licensure revoked. So you can always check to see if a provider you're going to has a history of MUIs by requesting them from the department. That's just for like the worst case scenarios. I will say that OACB, the Provider Association, OPRA in the state, 2 or 3 years ago now, came together to create what would essentially be an Angie's List for providers. Because county boards can't say, and for those of you who don't know what Angie's List is, it's like a recommendation service for any number of contractors you would use or any services you would use. The service that we came together to create is called Provider Guide Plus. That, you can go to providerguideplus.com and see it now. The system has had a bumpy start because, one, there are some user friendliness issues that we're going to be resolving here shortly to help make it easier to use. But families did not want to rate their providers using this service because they feared retribution, and they didn't feel comfortable if they were at a provider they were having a problem with, having that provider be able to, even if it was, it would just be, you could have whatever your screen name is. So Buckeyes Fan 5 could be your screen name on Provider Guide Plus, but you would have to tie it to your actual identity, like who you are, to make sure you're a real person and not just an employee from a provider agency or an ex-employee from a provider agency going in and leaving 1-star reviews. A lot of families had a hard time with that. We can't have it be anonymous and have it work, but then it becomes a chicken and an egg thing where if it's not anonymous and people don't want to do it because it's not anonymous, then no one's going to be coming into the system and leaving reviews. So this is a long way of saying the tool was created. It needs some tweaking to be more user-friendly, but the bigger hurdle to get over is whether or not families are going to put ratings into it. Because if there's no ratings, it's a useless system. We're going to try and fix some of the user-friendly things and then make a renewed push to get families to start using it. But as of right now, there is no other way to objectively evaluate providers where a county board can tell you, this is a good one, this is a bad one because of free choice of provider. And also, there are enough ratings in the system currently to be able to say, well, if you go to Provider Guide Plus, you'll see, this provider has 3 stars, this provider has 5 stars. You can make a choice accordingly. It doesn't exist right now, and it won't until we fix a couple things and also families start to use the system that was created expressly for that purpose.
So can we go to OPSR? Can they help in that?
Again, they're just going to be able to say, yes, the provider's licensure is current, they meet all criteria. If they've had any incidents, they can report them to you, I believe, not the specifics, but that yes, there were 7 MUIs reported here in the last year, whereas this other one you had asked about had 21 or something like that.
So all the provider certifications and compliance reviews are online. So it's not on Provider Guide Plus yet, but it is in the department's database. So if you search for a provider on the DoDD search tool, their latest compliance review is attached to their record there. So you can see every provider's latest compliance review there. So you can see the citations, plans of correction, all those type of things. That's all public on the website. If I could just add on to what Adam said about Provider Guide Plus, I think what would be really helpful too is not just the negative reviews. I think that everybody kind of looks at and focuses on, but I think it's really important that if you find a good provider that's doing good work, let others know about that good work. So leaving a good review is just as helpful for folks as leaving a negative review. So I just wanted to kind of tag on that.
I definitely am gonna look at that. I'm sorry, am I taking my time?
Yeah, fine.
Oh, just one more thing. So the provider, when you go in, they get their compliance review, you won't be able to see the staff, like MO, do they have consistent staff that just walks off the job? So you won't know that. Okay.
And Provider Guide Plus won't be able to measure that, even if it works to the best possible ability, unless parents say in their oral, their long form review of, I've gone through 8 different people at this agency, and that's why I don't like this agency. That would be the only way, even in the perfect world system, Provider Guide Plus working as intended, that's not something that is available.
Thank you.
I want to be respectful of Adam's time. Do you have a couple more?
Of course.
Okay, great. And we'll probably just do a working lunch then. So I've got one over here.
I'm wondering, advocate for individuals. And that would be to the state, I suppose.
Well, that's a very complicated question.
So I have a little bit more specific to ask.
Okay.
Now, to what extent should a family expect the county board to advocate for them when, for example, there's a rule in, I don't know, I have trouble distinguishing between the revised code and the other one that you mentioned.
You're not allowed, don't worry.
Okay, for example, an exception to the rule exists. An exemption to the rule exists. But somehow the individual's health and safety gets lost in the fact that the rule is there, it's retroactive as far as 5 years back. And the individual is somehow lost in that system. And the county board has been requested to at least speak to someone in the state that might be able to consider the individual case. Now, is that overstepping, or is that something that can be expected of the county board?
I know from firsthand experience and secondhand experience, there's a person on our staff named Lori Stanford. She gets what she sometimes lovingly, sometimes less lovingly calls story problems from counties for these very scenarios where they say, you know, an SSA says, my person wants to do this. I read the rule and it sounds like I can't do it, but that's ridiculous because we need to be able to do X, Y, Z. Can we get a determination from a person at the department who would be responsible for enforcing that rule to say, you're right, it's a gray area, so go ahead and do it. We'll authorize it, we'll deal with it later if somebody down the line has a problem with it. Those situations do occur. When it comes to formalized processes, like an appeal, for example, county boards historically have been of the opinion that if the SSA, the case manager, or whomever is supporting that person from the county board disagrees with a determination of how something should, they're like, we agree with you, but our hands are tied. You appeal it, and we'll say we agree with you. There have been different opinions from the state as to the appropriateness of that. We still maintain that as long as we believe that the intent of the rule is to be followed in a certain way and it does not take into account a certain situation, that we'll advocate for that. I think the new administration may be a little more willing to work with county boards on this than perhaps the previous one was. So I guess the long and the short of it is it's always going to depend on the situation. It's going to depend on whether it's something that's hard and fast in the administrative code or if it's a gray area. If it's a federal regulation, chances are we are probably not going to be able to do much about it. But county boards want to be there and support the people that they serve if they feel like the system and the bureaucracy is getting in the way of them living their best life. So the worst you can do is ask. And if they say no, ask for a reason why. And chances are, when you ask and that person isn't sure what to do, they're going to call us. Or they're going to talk to someone else in another county next door who may have dealt with it. So the short answer is yes, but it's complicated. And always request it, because the worst that can happen is they say our hands are tied for the following reason. So there is no statute or rule on the appropriateness of a county board representing the interests of families when it comes to a particular disagreement over how their services should be delivered. Does that answer the question?
It does. Thank you.
Sorry I can be more complete.
We've got one over here. Back to provider shortage, is there any way that the state could do some TV ads or make up pamphlets and pass them out to seniors in high schools or colleges? I mean, most people don't know these jobs exist.
what we have found, and this is why you've seen, I think, the push in this past 6 months, well, year, with the state budget process. What we found is it's not that they don't know the jobs exist, it's that they don't want to get paid $9 an hour to do it.
Well, if you're an individual provider, my providers get paid $17.60 an hour,
Right.
which is a good wage, I think, for part-time or full-time help
Sure.
versus, $9 an hour in an agency. Nothing against the agencies.
No.
They're there
And-
to make money.
And there are people at agencies that make $17.
And that's all you ever hear is that they don't get paid enough, but nobody talks about the individual providers, they just talk about agencies.
Right. Individual or independent providers are a can of worms I don't know that we have time for today. But when it comes to agency providers, we have focused most of our effort in the past year on increasing the average wage, and the legislature has responded pretty well to that, surprisingly well to that, in order to put state money in, and county boards are putting up money as well to raise that average wage and get more people interested in the field. When it comes to marketing efforts, that is something where, and this is true for the other, I mentioned Provider Guide Plus, you can have a brilliant marketing campaign, and if people get there and they can't use the tool, it doesn't matter. You can have a brilliant marketing campaign to get people interested in becoming direct support professionals. But if when they get there and it's time to sign on the dotted line to join an agency and be a provider, they say, wait, I'm going to make how much?
Right.
It doesn't matter.
That's why I'm not saying,
Sure.
I think you should distinguish between the two.
I'll bring that back to the groups that are working on that. I do know that the federal government has increasingly, and this is the can of worms that we'll just maybe stick our finger in, the federal government has increasingly said that independent providers shouldn't exist, basically. Through Department of Labor regulations, through standards that must be met, through a host of reasons why the federal government has been coming down on the concept and the idea of independent providers. One of the biggest is that if you tell someone, no matter if they're a contractor, if you tell someone where they show up, what hours they must be there, what they must do on that job, if they're a contractor, it doesn't matter. The Department of Labor says that person's an employee of whatever agency is doing it, whether it's the state, whether it's the county board in question. They say that person is an employee. It doesn't matter if they're 1099, it doesn't matter that, whatever tax form they file to be an independent contractor. They say, you're telling them everything, how to do their job, you're regulating it, you're doing all the things, you're saying all the things they must do. That person is essentially your employee for the purposes of labor. So that means you have to offer them health benefits, you have to offer, the same as other employees, you have to offer them health benefits, they are qualified for a retirement system. That's why the federal government is just basically making it difficult for the independent provider model to exist, and why both the state and county boards have been very wary in recent years of strengthening that, despite the fact that we know how well it works. We know in some counties, the only way people get services is by having an independent provider and not working through an agency, because for a variety of reasons, the capacity of providers in that county is not such that they can handle the number of people. They need those independent providers. We know that. We get it. In fact, with the ARC, were you with the ARC then? When we became very difficult? Well, we were partners in that difficulty. We actually, as advocates for independent providers, we, with the ARC's help, really kind of stuck it to the previous administration when they were trying to say that independent providers are now just not going to exist. After a certain date, we're not going to have independent providers be authorized for payment through Medicaid. We got, we were those meddling kids. They would have gotten away with it if it weren't for me and Steve. We stopped that from happening. So we have been an advocate on the side of independent providers for a long time. It's becoming increasingly difficult for us to do that, to the point where we actually had a county have a tax person come in from the IRS and make a determination that even some workarounds they were trying to put together to make it very clear that they weren't employees of the county was not kosher, and that they were going to have to end what they were doing. There's a definite movement afoot to make that model come to an end. So I don't know how advisable it would be to focus a marketing campaign on becoming an independent provider if over the next 2 to 3 years there could be a final determination from the federal government, I mean, not in this administration, but perhaps the next administration, that this model's not cool anymore and you're not going to be able to do that, we would have spent all that time investing people in a career path that would have the door closed on them as soon as they enter. Does that make sense? It's not a good scenario. We're not happy about it, but we also have to focus on things that we can accomplish. We can bite off little bits at a time and make real progress toward, and that would be getting people a wage that they're going to want to stay. I mean, we even had a county, they were approaching high schools about their vocational programs to say, you know, we've got careers out here. You can become a DSP, you know, half the DSP or half the agency providers in the state, their CEOs started as DSPs. They got involved in the system, they cared about people, and they rose through the ranks to eventually become the #1 at that agency. There is a viable career path for this. But the high school said, we've got people making $12.50 at Subway. Why are we going to create a whole program about investing people in the DSP profession if they're going to come out and make less than they could make at fast food? So we've got to work on the wage, then work on the marketing, and hopefully, after that sustained effort for a period of time, we're going to strengthen the profession as a whole and put more providers out there. But during the interim, we're in this weird limbo stage, and we're just going to have to do our best.
Yeah, if I could plug, we hired somebody at the department who's going to be focused on innovative ideas around DSP recruitment and career paths and everything that Adam just kind of outlined in that example there, but taking it kind of on a statewide level, working with higher education and, you know, showing the value of the profession and of the job. He's right in that this is the beginning stage.
I love when you say that.
I know.
It's so rare.
It is. That should say something.
Steve, I just wanted to tell people when you're struggling with providers, not to forget technology. Because even the smallest thing, my staff person who's retiring after 18 years, her son was living independently, but she was in my office every week saying, oh, Carolyn, the providers didn't show up. I've got to call them. What am I going to do? She went to technology. Now, he's pretty high functioning, but she cut her providers in half, the numbers in half with the technology. You know, the doorbell, and he feels much safer. The cooking, it's amazing what's out there, and can even one or two little things can help you with not needing the staff, and it's really inexpensive and whatever. So don't forget that and ask about it. We don't have enough folks yet and enough knowledge, but we're working on it.
So let's do one last question. I know everybody's hungry and the smell of pizza is wafting through the air. So let's do one more. And
again, I am willing to stay as long as you'd like to keep answering questions as best I can. I kind of blocked out the day for it, so it's up to you.
Hi, I am a sister of my brother who has autism. One of the things I noticed was at our county, I have a question about SSA independence. In the Ohio Administrative Code, it seems to indicate that SSAs actually have a lot of authority and their ability to make somewhat independent decisions and assessments of individuals. However, what I've observed in practice is that a lot of that has been removed from their ability to actually act independently. So I was wondering, what kind of oversight do the county boards have for this? Because in a particular case, like the assessment, a behavior assessment was done, and it was done by the SSA. However, the Human Rights Committee came and said, oh, that you can't, that's not an okay assessment. It wasn't, it's not done by someone who was qualified. However, the rule states that the SSA was qualified to do that. He has OTs, he has all kinds of services outside of the county board. However, the county, the Human Rights Committee determined, who was headed by an agency provider, said that they had to use their agency to make the assessment. And we've been told that on for more than just that assessment. They wanted us to use a particular agency to have these assessments performed when he had services from a variety of outside providers that we prefer, but they insist or limit the access that the SSA has to actually do the assessments or to provide the information to be able to do the assessments for outside agencies. So I'm wondering what oversight is there for those types of things?
So this is a very specific instance that I would be very hesitant to discuss when it comes to the merits of how it went down in your case. If you want to talk after about some of the complicating scenarios, maybe we can work with some staff at OACB to see if that really was the best way to go. But I will say, the revised code is very prescriptive. It says these are the exact things that you can do, and unless you can find some sort of justification in the revised code for doing this other thing, you probably shouldn't be doing it. The same is true with SSA. There's an entire rule. I mean, you mentioned the administrative code. The SSA rule, which is currently undergoing revision and will be hopefully done here. I think they postponed it because of some changes that we're making with the ISP, perhaps moving to a statewide single ISP platform in the template. But that rule is very specific as to what an SSA can and cannot do. If the SSA read it and interpreted that they can make this decision in the way that they did, then that was why it worked out the way it was, because the Human Rights Committee came back and read it a different way. It's just going to be, again, it's very difficult without knowing all the particulars of the case to say whether or not the county had sufficient oversight, whether there needs to be more oversight, what that outcome was. I'd be happy to talk to you about it when we're not on the mic, and I can follow up with.
My question was more general.
No, I understand.
What in general, what oversight is there for those types of situations? Like what oversight is there for internal policy that is at each particular county board?
So typically an SSA will report to an SSA manager or director. If they're a big county, there may be another layer in there, like a middle management style person, where their decision gets checked. If they have questions about it, they can refer to that person. It would go all the way up to the head of case management, the Service and Support Administration Director or manager, whatever their title might be, doing the same, as we referenced earlier, doing the same role. It would end at the superintendent at the county board. So if you felt that the committee made the wrong decision or the SSA made the wrong decision, you can always go through your board's due process policy and process to raise your concern and say, I feel like the SSA made the right decision, the Human Rights Committee made the wrong decision, or vice versa, and appeal that. I mean, it may not be a formal appeal in terms of raising it to DODD's level, but if it concerns Medicaid, you can appeal it all the way to the state, and they will have to respond and make a determination as to who was right in that scenario. County boards have some oversight, especially when it comes to how they administer their programs. They can say, yeah, you're right, this SSA did not follow internal policies and procedures, or they stepped outside, or actually they could have done more, and make a change accordingly. But again, it comes back to they won't know that unless it rises to the level of this is a problem that needs to be fixed, that's raised by the family themselves. So if you raise that and it goes through the channels to the superintendent says either our hands are tied, appeal to the state, or we agree with the SSA, or we agree with the human rights. I mean, the process is largely going to be the same in every county. It might have some different steps, and it might look slightly different, but that process always exists, and it always ends with the superintendent.
So there's no outside continuous review of county board policy?
That's a complicated question. There is outside review when it comes to the accreditation process. So when county boards go through their, whether 1, 2, or 3 year review of their accreditation, OPSR was now OSAS, I think. Yes. They will say, all right, these policies and procedures are in line with administrative rule, you're following them correctly, good job. Or they'll say, this policy you put in place 2 years ago after you had your last accreditation, that's not really passing the smell test for us, or that seems to take a little too much liberty, or that's not really doing what the rule says you should be doing, and boards will have to change that policy. So there is outside review of policies and procedures. There are appeal processes put in place at every county board, whether it's through locally funded services, local decisions, or Medicaid funded services that allow you, if you feel like the wrong decision has been made, to go through that process and say, this is wrong for the following reasons. It may still end up at the end of the day that they say, no, the SSA was wrong and the SSA was right. The outcome is not what you want, and it goes all the way to the very end, and the outcome is still not what you want. That's just the system does not work in the way that you feel it should. But there are processes and procedures in place. There is outside review. SSAs do have a lot of latitude, but by design, they're only allowed so much latitude because the family needs to be the one in the driver's seat, not the SSA. So there are safeguards put in place where an SSA can't just say, no, I know best, and this is what you're going to do. There are always paths to be able to say, no, that's not what we're going to do. I don't think that's right, and go through that path to come up with a different decision. Does that answer your question? Kind of.
Kind of. Thank you.
All right, let's thank Adam for his time, and I think we'll probably take him up on his offer to hang around this afternoon. So, thank you. All right, just a couple of housekeeping items. Lunch is ready in the back, so I'm going to make this quick because I know everybody's pretty hungry. Reminders, you have feedback forms in your folder. Please complete those. We'll have a space over here on the table that we can drop them off at the end. And I want to say goodbye to the folks on Facebook and at the watch parties that are happening. Thank you for your time this morning. Hopefully it was helpful. Please take this afternoon while we are here doing some table work and networking and connecting. Please do the same in your area as well. Connect to the families in your area. Talk about the information that was shared this morning and how it affects you locally. Again, lunch is in the back. Let's take a little bit of a break, maybe take 15 minutes to grab lunch, and then we'll start our table work, okay? Thanks, everyone.